Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, the American Film Institute's Top 100, where we critique the supposed 100 greatest American movies of all time. Join us as we decide if they're worthy of the Mott's Top 100. Or Mott's.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to Lost Signals. Discusses the AFI Top 100. Tonight, I am your cynical theater critic, Scott Thurlow. I'm here with my fellow theater brats and conspirators, Stephen Amosi.
A star only in my own mind.
Mm-hmm. Chris Morgan.
Hello. Thank you for this. Whatever.
All right. And a returning guest friend of the show, Joe Soria.
Test cheap sentiment.
Indeed. And based on that, tonight we are doing number 28 on the list, which is All About Eve from 1950, which, real quickly, if I may, before we get into it, it's apparently a very famous and well-known and, it won a lot of awards that year at the Academy and all this, and very famous actors in it. I had no idea about this movie. I'm not familiar with it at all. We just sort of randomly chose it, and I will say, spoiler, I liked it quite a bit, but I'm just saying, I didn't know about it, even, calling ourselves sort of film critics / nerds. I was totally in the dark about it as a blind spot. So,
I mean, I've been hearing about this movie for a long time, and I still hadn't seen it up until yesterday. So I'm glad that I did.
Yeah. So anyway,
Right.
What's that, Chris?
I forgot. I was going to say, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy podcast. Because that is the one line I always, that's been in the zeitgeist for not podcast, but where Betty Davis is like, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Is that from that, is that originally, wasn't it a single elsewhere?
Yeah. Back before cable, this movie apparently was on all the time. I'd see it on the commercials. And
all right, Grandpa, good to know.
If you want to go real grandpa on it, I believe it's actually about planes and not about cars, because cars, they don't have seatbelts then. So the seatbelt is actually about planes, if you want to do
it. True. But yeah, anyway, so how about I'll just tell you about the plot of All About Eve. It centers upon a famous theater actress played by Betty Davis, Margot something. I'm not going to remember the character's name, but she's a well-known New York actress who is friends with the playwright and her husband, and she's also sort of in a relationship, amorous relationship with her director, and sort of what appears to be a mousy, unassuming, sort of starstruck young woman sort of insinuates herself into her life. So sorry, I meant to say the log line. I came up with a single white female star is born, which is thought might be amusing.
I like it.
But yeah, so her name is Eve, and she's sort of I'm Margot's biggest fan, and sort of unassumingly wiles her way into Margot and in the circle of her theater friends' life. And as it goes on, she starts to get more and more attached, sort of become more and more indispensable, and just basically tries to, if not steal Margot's life, almost become her. It turns kind of dark when it's revealed that she's basically a sociopath and is trying to manipulate everyone and the situation around her in order to usurp Margot and achieve fame and stardom and, happiness, in quotes, etc., according to her own sociopathic values, in a sense, and sort of does that. And it causes a schism, right? She sort of causes a rift between the friends, and there's a lot of tension throughout between the characters. It's basically a character movie. Not a lot happens plot-wise. It's a bunch of characters doing stuff, really, having conversations and backstabbing each other and trying to remain friends and getting split apart, etc. And at the very end, she's sort of it's a nice sort of full circle, darker ending where she's achieved her fame. She's won whatever the highest acting award for theater was, and is in a hotel. And a la her at the beginning of the film, an unassuming little mousy high school president of her fan club shows up and is grabs her award and is wearing her dress or her costume and looks at herself in the mirror as if she's going to become Eve, as Eve had sort of quote unquote become Margot, and that's it. So it's a long movie. It's 2 hours and change, over 2, but that is essentially it. So as I said, I think to me it's a lot of character work, right? It's not an action plot or even a noir mystery plot or anything like that. Just a bunch of characters in a situation, living sort of the high life, if you will, in the theater world of New York in 1950 or whatever. I think it's set in contemporary 50, when it was made. So I'm looking at a very strong at least 2 plot-wise. I could go up to a 3, And if I do, it will be because of the ending. Because that was going to determine like whether or not I gave it full marks. So that's what I'm looking at. And with that, I'll open it up. What do you guys think? Someone go.
I think that you are absolutely right to bring up the ending as a very strong part of this plot. It's like a classic begins at the end, ends at the beginning type of movie, which is done really well in this, I thought. The whole opening with, them, you seeing her winning the award as Addison just like drones on about kind of what's going on and like sets the scene and everything. I enjoyed, and that part felt like almost like noir mystery-ish. Like I thought I was getting into kind of a different movie than I was almost. But it does still have those aspects, like those like really dangerous, almost Hitchcockian type of feel for part of it, where it's like you get the like single white female vibes or whatever, from Eve. And it does, like, you're right, it is fairly straightforward, but for how straightforward it is, it does get like pretty complex in terms of everyone's relationship to each other.
Out, Steve-O.
Is like really delved into and really defines kind of where the plot goes. I think I'm going to give this a pretty strong 3. I like this movie a lot, so I'll just leave it there and see what you guys have to say.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think the middle part is probably the weaker part, but I definitely agree with you guys on the first section and the closing. And I always find, that I want to see that vehicle, and then if you forget that, by the end, I think I forgot about the award ceremony. It was there for a while, and you always have that trigger, and you say, I'm going to remember, like, this is obvious. Okay, just another framing device. But they actually do a good enough job that you're like, you don't remember that part of the framing device. So I really think that was well done. I was very interested by the multiple layered voiceover selection. I think it sets a good tone of the different voices are speaking in this movie, because there's really, we'll get into the protagonist antagonist stuff, but there isn't a singular voice here. There's a lot of in and out, and each scene everyone gets to kind of get their moment, which is, a true ensemble piece, and that's showcased by how this is the only movie to have 2 women nominated for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, I think, in history.
Yeah. Or the first one, yeah.
Which is crazy. But it means there's 4 meaty roles for women. Nowadays, sometimes you hear people say that they could barely come up with a couple of, Best Actress roles because there's just not enough of them. It passes all those, the Bechdelian test or the test of women talking to women and talking about real issues and things that worry them. So I was overall quite impressed with that. But I think for the lull in the middle part and to be a little bit of the old style schlocky, I would go with it too, just because there's a couple of, I'm not the melodrama fan for sure. I definitely heard Bette Davis' eyes more times than I've seen a Bette Davis movie. So this is the first Bette Davis movie I've ever seen. And the same premise. I was just shocked. I've heard this movie's name probably 5,000 times, and I've never even thought about watching it. And it's a very good display of the period and of all these post World War II period and this backstage Broadway thing.
Literal backstage drama, sure.
Yeah. I was actually thinking a lot of Birdman during the movie. And I know that, it's a much different, and that's definitely a more humorous movie. I don't know if this movie was taken as humor when it was made, but if you watch it now, I don't think there's any humor in this movie. It's very dark,
I chuckled, but
stabby.
I laughed, but I was like, oh man, that's like a harsh, like fucking like badass line, right? Like in a sense.
So I read something that
comedic in that sense.
I read something that I thought was like really like spot on about this, in that it was somebody written an article about it, and they said it was a comedy of manners and a drama of infiltration. And I was like, that's like right on, like exactly what I thought about this. Like the comedy comes from the fact that no one is saying what they think or what they mean. They're saying things that to get around polite society or whatever.
Sure.
Anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, you haven't spoken yet.
I love this movie. It's extremely self-aware. As somebody who's actually, had brushes with the theater and film industry, it's amazing. And one of the reasons I'm such a critic of like award shows is they're so self-important. They're this little bubble they live in. Like, I love at the beginning where he's like, he's talking about like the architect, the things that are, you build the director and writer build these things for a light to, a little beacon. And it's just like, at the end of the day, as people who are creators of content, the people who are, media, we have our own little people in entertainment. I'm a musician and all that stuff. And we all have our, we all do our writings or whatever. It's a level of self-awareness to know that, like, hey, we're not curing cancer. We're not curing COVID. We're not launching rockets. But what we do is fundamentally a good escape. It seems to me like, this movie is very self-aware of the bubble. It is simultaneously embracing and criticizing. And the fact that Bette Davis is just like, fuck this shit. I want to go and have an actual normal life. And the funny thing is, I found Beth and I were watching it last night, and I was so engrossed in it to the point where there were times I'd stop paying attention to the conversation and just looking around the room. Like, I found it to be an extremely immersive experience. And like I said, it's not a discredit to the fact that I wasn't interested. It's the fact that I was just so fascinated with what was going on. Like, you'd be at a party where you're listening to a bunch of people in a bubble babble about stuff, and you're like, this is kind of interesting to hear this drama, but, it's just like, yeah, what are you drinking over there? It's, and as I said, being in these little, having been through these little bubbles, it is just fascinating to me. And I thought, I feel like this movie's self-aware. I think so. I can't remember. I think it was Joe. You brought up the point whether or not this was truly a comedy, or Steve-O, with the comedy of manners,
comedy of manners, and a drama of infiltration.
Yeah, exactly. And I was at this party in the Hollywood Hills once. This guy, is working in post-production.
The 50s, right? Go on.
No. This is the 90s. This is 99. And we went.
Matrix.
I was new in town. This guy was new in town. He's like, I'll have you come over, meet some people. I was talking to a theater director, and he was talking to me about everybody who was there and about like wanting to be an actor and wanting to be a movie star. And there's this woman who came with an entourage, and he's like, she's not going anywhere. She's got. So to me, looking at this thing was kind of like being back there. Yeah, there's a little personal nostalgia, but this movie just, I love this movie. I felt like I was part of this thing. It felt like very immersive, even though it was in black and white and, 70-year-old movie. I just absolutely adored this movie. I am, without hesitation or reservation, giving this a very strong 3. I thought it was damn near perfect. Yeah, there are a couple weak parts in it. Where the pacing, slows down, but I don't think that takes apart or takes away from the overall experience of the film.
Sure, I think I will agree at the end. Like, yeah, I mean, there were a few like, I don't even know if I'll call them lulls, but like, yeah, slower-ish parts. But I think that's just a nitpick. Like, I was very much engaged as well throughout the plot, so I'm probably going to end up with a 3. And I guess I'll mention in here 2 facts, I suppose. First of all, this is Screenplays by Joseph Mankovitz, which was the brother of Herman J., of course, of Citizen Kane fame, etc., which we have covered previously. And also, it was based on a true encounter by a stage actress from like the mid to late 40s who like told the story and then was written. And then like the sort of like Joseph Mankovitz was working on a different script for the studio. And then like he somehow, that story came across his desk or someone told him about it. So then he folded it into it. And then the producer worked on him with it. Like, so it's some interesting backstory stuff, like behind the scenes of how this movie was created and why it came about. But I think plot-wise, narratively-wise, I'm going to err on the side of a 3, like a 2.75 rounded up to a 3 for me.
By the way, did I mention it was a theater director I was talking to at this party? No, because given this fact that this is theater, sure. It was a theater director I was talking to. So put it more into the context of the film.
Fair enough.
When you mentioned that young lady who wrote that article, I'm just a young lady, but a woman, I think it says in the second line of the Wikipedia entry for this movie that they stole the story and they didn't give her she's uncredited for the story in the movie. So
harsh, yeah. I did not know that.
Related to the act of manking and
all that manking
shanking women.
Yeah.
So Mankovitz and Sylvester Stallone both stealing their stories, right?
Well, he also directed it, and I mean, if you look at the listing, it's crazy that he actually got nominated. He won Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Screenplay in back-to-back years.
Yeah,
just for movies. They don't do that anymore. It doesn't matter how good the movies are.
Pretty badass, but no, I mean, interesting fact is I did not know that they didn't credit her, like even like say like inspired by or whatever.
No, it doesn't say there. It just says written. They claim that it was on there, but I believe she's no credit in a film.
Well, that is harsh and unfortunate, but they did make a pretty good plot, so we're giving it. Three of us are giving it 3s, and Joe's sticking with a pretty strong 2. And so let's move along to themes, and that will be you, Stephen.
Sure. So, I was thinking about the themes of this, and there's obviously the cost of fame, right, is a strong theme in here, and Bette Davis kind of being very, she's very protective of her personal life at first, and then it turns out, for good reason, perhaps she should have been more protective of it. But it's a you see this theme pop up again at the end when this other young woman Phoebe is insinuating herself into Eve's life after Eve gains all this fame that Margot used to have. So it talks a lot about that and like kind of just the insecurity that is kind of forced upon women, especially women in show business. They talk about like how if you're a man, it doesn't really matter how old you are, you can get like parts, but
whatever.
If you're a woman, like Bette Davis' character Margot is constantly harping on how she's getting older and she's can't play this 24-year-old woman anymore or whatever. So there's the insecurity that comes along with that. And just like being a woman in a male-dominated industry in general, what I love about this movie is it feels like you get the sense that it's a male-dominated industry, but you see the story from the women's point of view the entire time. And like,
for the most part, like 80%.
Eve is like a backstabbing, conniving character, but she's an awesome character. Like they do her really well, and like they're multifaceted. Same thing with Margot. Same thing with even the friend. What was her name?
Birdie, I think. Is that the one you're talking about?
Well, not Birdie, but her too. And she also got
Karen. Karen.
Yeah. Karen. So like you get like these really great conversations that are like half, like backstabbing and like jockeying and positioning, and half like really like laying bare, like the conversation that Karen and Margot have in the car after she siphons all the gas out or whatever, and she orchestrates I guess I should just call it the breakdown. So the breakdown of the car and Margot's breakdown herself, like where she really like lays bare how she feels about things and how insecure she's feeling. Seems like a really important scene in a movie like that. And a lot of times what you see in movies like this is they don't have those touchstone scenes, and they tell you what the theme is without actually showing you how the characters are being affected and things like that. I think this movie does a great job showing you all that. So in terms of themes, I thought obviously very strong. And if you guys have any other ones you want to bring up, go ahead.
Let you go, kid, Chris.
I was gonna that what Steve was said before about women in the industry versus men in the industry, especially given the time. I thought thematically this film, you can definitely say that there were things that may have been part of the time that we're trying to acquiesce to the whole thing. With the fact that a 40-year-old actress says enough of the business, I'm going to go, there may or may not be a mixed message there. But thematically, I do think they address pretty fucking well some issues that are still relevant today and still, being, in the zeitgeist. I mean, a few years ago, Frances McDormand gave one of the best socially aware speeches. She wasn't preaching to the choir, but she was preaching to her industry about how women are treated in show business. She wasn't, like whatever her name was, that actress from New Jersey, whose name I'm blocking, who went on a rant about Trump. It's just like, no, get over it. Frances McDormand, when she did that speech, still spoke to a lot of issues that were in this film, that are still relevant today. I'm giving Themes a very strong one.
All right. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, Themes, I'd also go with the one. Steve said most of them, but fear of aging, the vicious cycle of lives. The big one I think is authenticity and what's real and what's not real, and that's always something that's picked upon on these type of movies where it's like the backstage. You see them, they're taking off the makeup and they discuss like how important their activities are, and then it's, oh well, I'm not a big deal. It's not that easy, and then don't bring that woman in, and then she's a big fan. Okay, let's bring her back in. It's it's almost like a good formula that people have used ever since, and probably a little bit before. But this definitely seems like a template movie that if you watch movies from now, it really feeds into that, and it just gets a different version, whether it goes humorous or darker. So I can see this movie getting amazing credit for having that 4 strong female leads, which is very, very, or not leads, but they're the strongest characters, right? The men, even though I think the men's the only one that won an actor role.
Yeah,
George Sanders won, I think, which is that's a weird. I don't know. That doesn't seem like the best role to me, but the men in this.
That's the problem here.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a strong female film, which is the most interesting part about it, because you don't get to see this written that well, and you don't get to get the evil killer but not actually a murderer, and looks like June Cleaver out of the Leave the Beaver or something, and then the one part I enjoy is the Marilyn Monroe stuff is just like where they're just all still shitting on that other woman, so it's like don't shit on women, but like, oh, we don't like that woman because she's too much, so
totally a bimbo though, for pure.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
And the importance of theater, I guess they always, I feel like that's always has to be in play, and it's funny because they talk about the playwright and the authorship in the beginning and the director and how important they are, and it's like it's really about their performance here and their second, they could do their job forever. She only has this time period to do it. So, and they're the ones always lauded for it too. So,
yeah, I mean, I think you guys said it all. Like all that, like what's impressive to me is that all that stuff is there, and like you said, like sort of the cutthroat atmosphere of the specific industry, and like the gender roles and stereotypes, etc. of all of that. And I think it all works and is really like I said, really well condensed and woven throughout, that they're able to like sort of juggle all this stuff and go from one to the other, and even like do both at the same time, and like sort of 3 or 4 levels to it in the same scene or two. So yeah, I think themes are very, very strong, and I'm gonna also agree with you guys and give it a strong 1. And we'll move along then to maybe it's sort of related, Joe. So who or what is the antagonist of All About Eve?
This is I don't know where you guys are going on this one at all, but I mean, I think everyone's an antagonist. I mean, this is a movie that really has no leader, no hero. I think it's about survival. It's like everyone's out in the woods, and they're worried about them. They're worried about others, but they're really worried about themselves. So there is no one gets away clean. No one's on the ark for saviorship, or no one's going to be the Jedi. I think this is so to me, the antagonists are great in this movie because they're everybody in the movie. I think especially if you have Betty Davis, you're counting whatever killer June Cleaver there, Eve. You're counting I guess the other lady, she helps Eve, right? And the shitty writer that's basically blackmailing, sex mailing her for the last like 30 minutes of the movie. I'm just like, who's good here? So yeah, I mean, it's that's where I would lean it to. This is definitely a 1 for that, and I think it's exemplified in like a quote where you have like, where Bill says you have every reason for happiness, and Margot says except happiness. I mean, all these people are against to do what to be happy. No one here is looking to be happy. They're just looking to like keep succeeding as long as they can.
It's almost like they're trapped in their old world, like of literal drama, both within their professions and without. And yeah, I think you're right. Like they all trade off roles, like to being antagonists. Like on the surface, you might say, oh, it's Eve. Like when the reveal comes, oh, she's not the mousy, unassuming little innocent girl. She's like, conniving, manipulative, like worming her way into the business. But like everyone's already doing that sort of to a degree anyways, or at least it's heavily implied / stated that they have. And yeah, you're right. Like the happiness line is a really good one to point out. Like I think it is that. And again, it's super impressive to me that a movie like from this era, like I know we sort of like sometimes say that, but I can't help but invoke it in this instance where like they balance that stuff and the character work is so strong, especially because like, yeah, like the joke I was going to make is, I guess I'm always making here, that the two guys, Bill and Lloyd or whatever, like they were like literally interchangeable to me. Like I sometimes couldn't tell them apart, like when they were on screen. I was like,
seriously,
same
right?
Fucking guy, like pretty much, right? So like, I thought that was kind of funny in a meta way because often you might think it's like the women's roles were the case in that sense. Or like,
in this era, you mean? Yeah,
it'd be easy to fall into that trap again, especially from this era. But I mostly agree with what you said, and I like the way you stated it. That's how I'm viewing it for sure, and that's why I'm giving Antagonist a 1 as well.
No,
that
critic sticks out too. So I just like he's the one that actually sticks out of those characters, but it's for a bevy of other reasons.
Yeah.
I think we'll get to him in secondary, but I got more to say about what's his name, DeWitt, I think was his last name in the film when we get to it. But I agree. So delve into Chris. You wanted to say something?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say when Eve started telling her backstory, I was turning to Beth. I'm like, she's lying. She's a fucking sociopath. Neither one of us really knew for a film that's been the zeitgeist this long, and fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. Is in the zeitgeist. We really didn't know a lot about it. So I was viewing Eve as the antagonist, and I figured, that DeWitt was like narrating it. Turns out he's been
at first,
but he's been pulling the strings. So I'm actually gonna say, yeah, Eve's. Yeah, you're right, Scott. All these people are swimming in their own misery, and it's misery of their own doing. You have to struggle to be in the you have to work hard and be very, very lucky to get into the pool of misery that they are. And I understand what you're saying about pretty much anybody, but I'm going to say that actually Eve and DeWitt, and especially DeWitt, are the antagonists because she may have been, the fly in everybody's ointment up until then, but he was really pushing and prodding.
He was always been skeezy
and manipulating. Yeah, I thought he was just like a snarky, like a proto Stephen Fry at the beginning of this. I kind of expected, I kept thinking like nobody's going to remake this film, hopefully, but I'm like, this is the role that was made for Stephen Fry. So I'm definitely gonna say the antagonist is split maybe 60-40 between DeWitt and Eve.
I was actually going to say that as well, and kind of my response to what you were saying, Joe, is I tend to think about this question, like antagonist and protagonist, as like, I don't look at protagonists as necessarily the hero of the movie. I look at them as the person who you are most perceiving the movie through their lens, right? Like, so I look at that in this, it's called All About Eve, and it's about what Eve does. But for me, Margot is the character that we really identify, that the audience like identifies with, right? And like that's for me, that's my protagonist, right? Whereas and Eve, and like if I take that stance, then like Eve is her antagonist, and to a degree, Addison as well. But honestly, the only reason that Addison ever enters into this is because Eve is so lustful for what Margot has that she, basically makes a deal with the devil, and then realizes too late that it's more than she bargained for, right? But like,
yes,
yeah, but at the same time, she's still willing to go through with that, and like, because she knows that it'll get her the fame that she wants, and she can take over and take what Margot had, right? And then it's kind of she gets her own villain or antagonist at the end of the movie when this young woman comes in and starts to do the exact same thing to her. So like, I think you're right, Chris. I think it is Eve and Addison are, for me, the two antagonists, but I go the other way. I think Eve is far more of an antagonist in this movie than Addison is. And I think they're both really, I think they're fantastic in terms of that. And don't get me wrong, and we'll talk about this in a minute too, but like Margot's character is shitty in her own ways, and like, but that's all like built into this script so well. Like, I love the way that they write it. It's like you can feel bad for all of these characters at any given point, or you can feel like they deserve what they get at any given point too. And I think that's the mark of a pretty good screenplay in terms of that. And yeah, so I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna give Eve and Addison a pretty strong one for antagonist.
Do you think it's because also maybe it's because maybe it switches in perception too, that like maybe that's the perspective? Because I do think in the beginning you're meant to think that Eve, you know, is the protagonist, right? And then it does actually switch. I don't know how you would do it. So it's like, and she's so actually antagonizing as a person. So while you know, maybe she's not the antagonist, she is by far the most antagonizing person. The one who's you know, my own worst enemy, right? And then finally you're trying to, like, she's redeeming herself because she's kind of so worn at the end of it, really just beat up by the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I would almost say, like, at the point where you're supposed to believe that Eve is the protagonist, you don't actually know who she is at that point. The only time that, like, when you're allowed in to see who she is, she's firmly entrenched as the antagonist at that point, to Margot, who we're supposed to kind of take her aside, even though she's got her own issues or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if that makes any difference, but yeah, that's just kind of something that occurred to me as you were mentioning.
No, I think those are, because we're all giving it ones, and I'll just final thought on that is that I think it is a strength of the screenwriting and character work that no matter how you cut it up, you're probably going to give it a strong one anyways to this question, probably to the next one. Like, right, however you slice it, put X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3 characters in this or that category, it works because it's so well-rounded, and they're also, pretty, very, very much fleshed out. So,
well, yeah, the fact that it's even a question is a testament to that, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, buddy. But that means we're all giving it ones anyways. And Chris, you can now talk about whoever you think is the protagonist.
I'm going to once again split protagonist duties between Margot and Karen. And here's why. I was originally thinking it was going to be Addison until the end reveal where, he's been, very critical. Very, I mean, the fact that he's, as a critic, he he believes, if not, in fact, is above all this. He can look down.
He acts, yeah, exactly. I said that. Sorry, Chris. I said that during the watching. I was like, he's just above it all. Like, I'm too good for this. Like, I know everything. Like, blah blah blah.
You saw us, and you were like, that guy must be the protagonist.
Yeah, yeah. So.
No, seriously. Like, me and you were like, I mean, we're going to like this character because we see ourselves to a degree in it.
Exactly. No, I mean, because originally I was assuming it was going to be him, but as I'm sorry. As Joe brought up before, I almost called you Steve-O. As Joe brought up before about the mixed narration, right? You had Addison kind of doing the blanket narration. You found out that he was kind of like the one above it all, who knew he was above it all, kind of pushing and prodding and manipulating himself. The narration in the middle of it kept switching between Margot and Karen.
Yep.
I mean, even though in a weird way everybody was a pawn to Addison, I think it was the two of them that we were following. I mean, you can't really tell Margot's complete story without Karen being there, and Margot was the prey if Eve was the supposed predator. Without Karen, there would not have been that complete picture because Eve and Addison were manipulating everybody, the director and the writer, who we all probably agree are interchangeable. I kept forgetting. I couldn't tell,
Yeah.
It depended on who was either embracing who or storming away from who at any given point in time. But Karen and Eve really kind of, Karen and Margot really filled out, everything that needed to be filled out in the center. So with that, I'm giving it a very, very strong one, and throw it to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the opposite end of the coin where no matter how you slice it or whoever you categorize into either antag or protag, I think it ends up being a one regardless. Now, I guess I would say I personally probably like sort of more pull along to what the film / script sort of wants the audience to like feel, as if Margot mostly is the protagonist, but it can switch, right? Depending on whose viewpoint we're following and how sympathetic like the film again like sort of teases you to be, or you are feeling anyways towards each of these characters at any given point, based on their previous actions or what you expect they're going to do, and whether or not they do that or don't do it. So I'm just saying, like, to me, it's an easy one for both of these questions because of the portrayals, and again, because of the strength of the script that builds these characters up so well that they can sort of like have this nice, like you said, Joe, it's an ensemble cast, right? So like in a case like this, it's going to live or die upon the performances and the strength of characters, and I think it lives quite well in that sphere in this case. So.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say on this. I feel like we went through this pretty deeply. So, but I'm just trying to think to myself, why are we giving a writer credit for writing about a writer and like another writer to a writer?
The Mankovitz.
It's like a Mank quadrupled.
Yeah.
He seemed to be the nice
one.
Trust
me, I thought of that too. Like it didn't like escape me that it was a thing.
Like, look how important we are. We're theater critics. I've seen. I don't know. Maybe there's something about this trope that really doesn't do it
wanky,
for me.
For sure. Like yeah,
you know. And I know it was important. Like writing the big review in New York Times and stuff is important. But I just the outsized placement and how much power and how they can control everything. I don't know if you guys have seen Sweet Smell of Success, which I watched recently. I love, and it's probably the humorous version of this, but in all guys. It's Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis, and it's like he's trying to get a Page Six story with the big Page Six guy the whole time, and it's very funny, great movie, and you can just see like how the reverence is there, and I don't know, I don't know. One of these I want to give a 0, just because I don't feel that it has both of them. I know you guys have made your other point, and I can give it, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to give the pro tag the 0 and give the antag the 1.
Fair enough. Fair. I want to just say I think in terms of, for me, I somewhat agree with the Academy here. I don't think that Karen is a protagonist for me. She is a supporting character and a good one, I think, but I think that Betty Davis's character, Margot, is the sole protagonist in my mind.
The way you're cutting it up, yep.
Yeah. I think I love this portrayal, so I'm going to give it a 1 in terms of that. And
right on.
You guys have made a lot of other good points about it, but I'm going to leave it there.
All right, yeah, so like that makes it interesting because it brings me to secondary. So like if I just lump these 4 characters, whether or not they're anti-protag, like I said, as I literally just said, it's almost moot, but that leaves like, I guess, like the housekeeper or whatever, like their other friends, like the ancillary people, right? Like, so like at first I was going to give it a 1. I was going to give this movie like 1 to the character questions at least. At least I was coming into it as such. But as we just talked it out, if I'm going to classify them as I just did, that doesn't leave a lot of other room. Like, and yeah, Joe, I guess I'll just say like, what is his name? Addison, like felt a little Gary Stewie, especially because like, clearly was sort of an XP for like Mank or like writers in general, like critics, etc. But I guess, like I said, the way we just talked out, that means I kind of might follow suit, or at least if I'm going to drop a 0, I guess I'm going to drop it here, especially in the way I just sliced up the other question. So that's how I'm looking at it. So what do you boys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the fence about this one. I think that Karen is a good supporting character. I just, I know I just put her in that.
I lumped her in the other one, so sure.
Category. The rest of them are good to find good, but like there's nobody else. Like you said, I almost said there's nobody else that sticks out, but yeah, like the writer and the director are not Addison, but the writer of plays and the director of
Bill
plays.
and Lloyd, or whatever.
The two like husbands or whatever are almost interchangeable. Which maybe was on purpose, and if so, good job, because I completely like the first half of the movie, like not half, but the first like half an hour of the movie, I was like, like which one is which? Marilyn Monroe has a mostly forgettable role as Miss Caswell, just a bimbo, like blonde bimbo type character, which seems really out of place in this movie. That's strongly like exploring the inner lives of all the rest of the women, and then has this like character that it's clearly the movie's just making fun of.
It's super stereotypical, in that sense.
Birdie is good, but I don't understand why she got like a nomination for an Oscar in this year. You're like,
she's John Ritter's mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that why she got a nomination?
No.
Well, like
Must have been
that's what I mean. Like this character was good, but like she had like 5 good lines of dialogue and was like funny sometimes, but like it wasn't a really tour de force performance by any means. I didn't think.
Sure.
And that's kind of it for me. I think you're right. I don't think that this is a perfect movie. I think it's a very good movie. I don't think it's a perfect one. And if I'm looking for somewhere to give a 0 to, it's probably going to be here. So I'm going to be on that side of the fence unless somebody convinces me otherwise.
I'm with you. What do you guys think? Who hasn't gone yet? I think Chris hasn't gone.
Yeah, I'm giving this a 1, and here's why. Well, number 1, Marilyn Monroe's part in this, I have to say, I appreciate it so much because, again, that conversation I had with the theater director, I love the way, just to show you the extent of how above it all and how kind of cruel DeWitt is. He's kind of backing her. Here's this pretty face who comes in, could be a star. And it's just like, well, she failed the audition.
He's trying to bang all the hot little stars.
We're pushing her off to its minor role on television. Like he's looking down on television. It's like, oh yeah.
I noticed that line too. I'm going to come back to that in dialogue,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be shit roles, man.
The reason, the fact that Bill and I don't know, the writer and the director, whoever they are interchangeable is because all they do is kind of like they're at the service of Karen and Margot.
Sure. They're like,
They kind of are their own character, but without them, they provide a foot how do I say this? A personal foot in their relationship, even though everybody's still in the business. Well, actually, Karen's not in the business. She's married into the business, as they pointed out. I think they do a good job my whole argument is, and this is me, from a narrative perspective, being dual protagonists, Karen and Margot, they each needed their own personal human foil, which is their love interests. I loved Birdie because Birdie was in a way outside of it all. She was kind of like the DeWitt that was in Margot's corner, where she's outside of it and she's got a perspective that Margot doesn't have. So I think that while the writer and the director to us are interchangeable, that didn't matter because they only serviced, it was just for the emotional state of Karen and Margot. I thought Birdie was the kind of like the less, kind of like the opposite of DeWitt in some ways, similar but opposite. And, Marilyn Monroe was just there to show, DeWitt's cruelty. And so I'm saying that, like, it could have really been anybody. It didn't have to be Marilyn Monroe. But as far as the other 3, as far as the 2 interchangeable guys and Birdie, who I thought she was a wonderful character. I liked her a lot. I'm giving it a 1.
Where do you stand, Joe?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to the 1 on this too, because I definitely take Karen as the supporting character here, and I didn't really include her in the protagonist antagonist.
Yeah, kind of.
Process. She is definitely just the she's the conduit between them. She's the one that causes the kind of switch, which to me that makes her supporting because she's kind of like utilized for the benefit of the protagonist antagonist type thing. But I think I agree with the somewhat interchangeability of the 2 men, but I do think the director Bill is a little bit better form. Number 1, because he actually shows kind of an ideal for a man to be supportive of someone she's going through these struggles. He keeps trying to be reassuring. He's not just like stepping out and being a dick. Like he's actually just trying to like help her. He's going out to Hollywood. He does disappear because he has another job, but he comes back and tries to help her.
He's loyal and faithful to her. Yeah, true.
Right. The writer, I think, is the real like the floozy of it. So I think he's the one that makes the other guy feel worse. Like he's the milquetoast garbage man to me. Like he's not much of a writer to me. And I do think the Marilyn Monroe is the foil. I agree. I think it actually does a good job where you could see it kind of tells you where Eve's career could go, possibly, where like if she doesn't succeed or if she tried it a different route and didn't go this secret route, she would be kind of passed around. It's like you have to, shoulder up to the right people to be able to do this. And she shouldered up to the strong woman instead. So like, do we give her a little bit of a little bit of credit for that. And the last one we haven't mentioned as much, I did like his supporting act, was the Russian theater director, whatever, Max.
Owner guy.
So I like him. So I think, all around, it's not like the strongest supporting character collection. We've seen definitely some other ones that are stronger in overall performance, because this is a very heavy starred movie. And then, but I do think just with that batch alone, it's worthy of a good one.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, I think it just depends, like the way we cut up the characters in our own minds into sort of categorize them, if you will, like sort of somewhat ironically, I suppose, in this case. I think that's depending like how we scored, antag, protag, secondary. But it makes sense the way we did it.
Sorry, man. I just want to get in before we go to the next question. I think that you guys have convinced me, especially since I put Karen into this category. I think she is a really.
I marked it down for a 1 because of that.
And you definitely convinced me that some of these other characters are a bit stronger than I was initially thinking of them as. So, I'm gonna give it a 1.
Alrighty, I'm the only one who dissented there, but like I said, just the way we cut it up. Well, anyway, Steve-O, why don't you keep talking about talking with dialogue?
Yeah, I mean the dialogue is one of the stronger parts of this movie. It's very clear from the beginning, and the actual performances make it so much stronger than it even was on the page, which is really good too. So like, I don't have a ton to talk about. Obviously, Chris has been quoting one part. It's not only is it good, well done dialogue, but it's a pretty quotable movie as well. Like there's a lot from it that's just like really snappy, witty dialogue and great comebacks. Like a lot, like I guarantee that not guarantee, but like I feel like a lot of the reason that the Birdie character resonated so well was just her quick, like vaudevillian, snappy comebacks, and I feel like that still plays well, but I feel like it probably played really well in 1950. Like that probably got huge, if not laughs, like just that. Kind of feeling
levity there.
I love this lady. Like she's fucking great. So that's all I'm going to say about dialogue. It's a really strong one for me. I absolutely dug it. So
no, I agree. I don't much more to add either. Like I just was engaged with it, and like I think I mentioned on the onset, like I was chuckled at some lines, but not like at the film. I was like, oh man, like that, like when a character, like when they had like some barbs at each other, and I was like, damn man, like. That's some sick writing right there. Like, and again, like the performances also elevated it. So, and maybe some of it bleeds over into style, but I felt as if, and I was wrong about it because Ian and I, when we were watching, like looked it up, but I was like, this has to be based on this, like an actual play, right? He's like, no, I'm like short story and then adapted by Mank, etc. Everything we said, but it felt like as if it were sort of stage play-ish dialogue, but in a grounded and just, gritty, believable way. So yeah, I'm giving dialogue quite a bit of credit. Maybe one of the 3 or 4, aspects of the film that I like the best, and I'm going to mark it a very strong 1 for me.
I figured it was. Honestly, not looking at it first, I figured it was a play. A lot of these movies, but I do think that's kind of the era and how they're performed and
the
theatricality of it, and it being, you think a movie about actresses at a play is going to be a play, right? Right now, if you made that movie, there's no way it wasn't already done on some kind of stage. So,
yeah, exactly.
Dialogues. I mean, it's a Mankovitz, script. I mean, you look through his career, that's what he's known for. A lot of these, if you remember from Mank, it's just a room of people from the theater that have moved out that way to make more money, and that's just how it was back then. You have the same thing like Barton Fink. That's the whole essence of the period. So it's never been trouble for the trading of barbs. I still think it. I don't know about how much laughing would have gone. I really do think. These are I think it's very, very dark. It's very, very, very...
I chuckled darkly at the lines, I guess is what I meant.
It's very stabbing. This movie is like, if you go through the lines, and it's just all about, good references and inferences. And, I really just think the back and forth is good. And you have them in really nice segments. I think he did a really good job on the writing part, not just the dialogue of setting the parts where each kind of character got a moment to be alone with usually one other important character to make sure they had an impact and not just like we're all standing in a room and having a dinner party, the type thing. So, I thought it was really good. So it's a 1 for me.
I got you. Chris, what's your assessment?
Put me down for 1. I basically have been, as Steve said, quoting dialogue, so put me down for 1.
I did. All right, so let's move along and maybe like somewhat tied in, but maybe not. Joe, the style. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, style on the dialogue is obviously sets the pace of the movie itself. So, especially this type of period of movie, that this isn't a super visual movie. I think there are some moments, but for the most part, it's kind of we're in the back. They have the stage settings, and you got the settings in the backstage.
Literal stage.
And then there's another stage, and then there's an awards banquet, and then there's like some houses. There's really not. There's the only time they're outside is they showed some,
they're outside the theater in New Haven or whatever.
Yeah, did you see that when they're outside, they had like the rear projection? They're like pretending to walk.
That was my favorite thing. The worst fake walk I've seen. I know that I'm sure there's other ones, but I had not like that's like a fake makeup, like a Tommy Wiseau scene when they want to film like on top of the pyramids or something and walk there. I don't know, but
I mean, that's what they had at the time. But I did notice it too. I was like, it's super fake. Like you can't help it,
but you could just film outside. You could help it. But the costumes are very nice. Like I'm not a big costume person, but if we're going for style, like everyone, there's a lot of shifting and style, and you could see that when Eve gets better, her costumes get better, and you could see like the nicer suits versus the other suits, and stuff like that. But style wise, it's not my best on set, but I think on overall, it's an acceptable one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Sorry, just real quick. I don't much to add, but I'm going to give it a 1. And it, again, sort of ties back to what we just said is like, it felt like a stage play-ish, like in terms of even the shots and stuff like that. So I'll save the soundtrack to music for you guys. But yeah, I was quite engaged and very much enjoyed the style throughout. So giving it a 1.
I was actually going to say a similar thing. I think that what makes this really fascinating is it's a movie about kind of theater, but also about like transitioning to film in a lot of ways. Like a lot of people talk about going off to Hollywood and things like that. And the style of this felt a lot like they were filming stage sets.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're getting at. Yeah,
and like using like film, editing tricks and stuff like that, but to film set play. Like you said, there weren't that many scenes. There's like a point where they're all sitting on the staircase in like the foyer at the party, and like that felt like a lot like a play.
Yep, exactly.
Like there were a bunch of scenes that like
that. Yeah.
I was watching it and I was like, if they weren't doing so much action with the camera right now, this would feel like a play. There's people like coming in from off stage, like open the door, like close the door behind you, like you do this whole like active kind of entering the stage, but on top of that you have like the cuts of the camera, which really add like a filmic element to it. So I don't know, I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to mention something else and now I've forgotten what it is.
Well, trying to think of it. Chris, what's your take on the style?
The last shot of this film alone would
That's
give...
what I was going to say. Fuck.
Well done, buddy.
Shot of this film alone would give style a 1. One of my favorite shows is The Twilight Zone, and it's because and style of that goes a long way. And Twilight Zone's basically a radio play or an early television play where it's like this
Definitely.
one. You rarely have complete sets. It's usually shot from one person. They never really show the 360, especially the interiors. This film was very much like that. I absolutely am a sucker for this style. It's the kind of thing you could wrap around you like a comforter and immerse yourself in. It's something that, like I said, is a style that I absolutely adore. And couple it with, as you said, Joe, the costumes, how they express.
One for costume, or one for best costume, I believe, also at that year.
And also, believe it or not, what they're drinking at any given point in time also says a lot about where they are. How much they're drinking at any given time. There's a lot of little visual cues in this. I absolutely adored the style to this film, so I'm giving it a very strong 1. And I don't really have much to say about the soundtrack, except the composer was Alfred Newman. It was the music was great. It was integrated right into it. So
it didn't take. I gotta say this. It didn't take me out. I felt it matched and was relevant to each scene that was happening. So, perfectly fine that it was there, sort of, if not stapled on, but in the background, and it worked. All right, so looks like this 1's all around for style, pretty strong. That will bring me home to recommend yes, I indeed recommend All About Eve. Like I said, having not really much familiarity, if at all, previously in my pop culture / film going experience, just kind of a blind spot. But now having seen it and it being number 28 on AFI, yeah, I could see why it's pretty high up there. Like I could see why it stands and it's sort of like reverberates throughout the rest of film history. And I will, in fact, strongly recommend it. So, one for me. Go ahead.
Isn't that supposed to be Chris's question?
Nope. I got an S for me.
All right. My bad. Anyway, I recommend it.
I did it fucking right.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it was. I honestly, I haven't seen it either before this, and I don't know why, but I've waited far too long, and I'm glad that I finally have. I've been hearing about this movie for like years, and I'm always like, yeah, I gotta check that out. I hear it's great, and now that I've finally seen it, I know what all the hype is about. I'm into it. Everybody, go out there, check it out. It's a good 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever to spend. Yep.
And Steve, it was even your suggestion that we do this. We didn't even like to roll the dice on this. You're like, isn't it about time we do All About Eve?
Yeah.
Or something.
Sorry, Chris. I think what it was. Yeah. Sorry. What it was is that we had a list of like 6 or whatever. We rolled 1 or 2, and then All About Eve was left. And he was like, "Why don't we just do that one?" And we were like, "Okay, yeah. Sounds good." But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Go ahead, Joe.
I do think it fits in for AFI to put this type of movie on the list. It's a movie about making of art. You know, I don't know. This is like, why did the artist win so many awards and no one cares about it? But this one actually makes sense that it has like a process. It sets a place and time. You know, I don't discredit it for the set stuff. I mean, back then, that's what they did. Most of the sets are, reused sets. They're not going to put it in like actually rent out. You know, I'm sure some of them are like you rented a playhouse for the stage,
a restaurant or whatever. Yeah.
But it was much more cumbersome to do that type of thing, especially back then. So, I'm just thinking, for most people, I still think this. If you're not interested in film history, I don't know if this would be like the number one movie for you. 220. My lady fell asleep in the first. She fell asleep right after the
your
ceremony.
Your lady fell asleep in every film.
I know, but she also woke up for this end of the ceremony, so she basically watched the short movie that she got the award. I was just like, you got a different movie.
You're like, it's a hell of a film.
But it's very entertaining. I think as long as you hang with you like this type of period and style, because the acting style I don't think is for everybody, but and it'll turn off pretty quickly. You'll know pretty quickly if you'll be interested, and it will get better in the second half, but it won't get infinitely better. So it's a 1 for me, but just I like to give fair warnings.
A softerish 1, but you still recommend it overall.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so
let me wait a second.
Yes.
See, once again, you're forgetting me.
I'm sorry. I put a 1 for you already, Chris. You're going to recommend it, but
this movie's okay, I guess. No, I was about to say the first Betty Davis film I saw, to my recollection, was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. So it's on the other side of this. It's like whatever happened to Baby Jane, because she was vaudeville, and this was kind of like and it was really lovely to see Betty Davis showing the range that she had, that she could do comedy, that she could do drama, that so yeah, I'm giving a strong 1. I quite enjoyed this film a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I also want to mention. I figured you would, so I preempted you, or I pre-put you a 1. But go ahead.
I just want to mention before we're done, this movie came out the same year as Sunset Boulevard, and kind of blew it out of the water in terms of Oscars that year. I guess Sunset Boulevard has the last laugh if we're talking about the AFI Top 100 because it's higher up. But
it's higher up, and like the funny thing is also like I remember like more Sunset Boulevard than, like I said, than this one.
We never watched this one before.
I understand, but that's what I mean. Like it just in the zeitgeist, like. I just had more of a memory / I in fact did see at least Sunset Boulevard one time through, and I had never seen this one. But
pretty good year for movies, I suppose.
Yeah,
at least those 2 very highly rated movies.
Yeah. All right. So before I give out the scores, anyone have anything to add or forget anything, or want to throw anything at the end?
Just trying to think of my alternative title here, but I think this one really, that's the one thing we didn't talk about in the dialogue part that I think is most humorous is how many times they said the word about Eve in this movie. Probably has to be in the championship level of like, it's all about Eve, it's about her, it's really about her. See?
And they fucking, I mean, dude, Joe, they fucking title dropped it in the first opening 5 minutes.
It's like, well, he is writing an article about her, so that's fair. But it just seems all they're doing, I guess, it's like it should be everybody's talking about her or something, or
everyone loves Eve.
All about aging, all about aged in wood. I like that title, but
killing acting Eve or something. But anyway,
and how is I mean, I know that aging has changed in this world. I've been told, but I don't know if he's 32. I'm like 22 or whatever. So I just want to put that on the notes. There's no way that like that actor. He looked like he's like, I know I'm 32 and you're 40. I was like, you look like
you're fucking 50, dude. But whatever.
Yeah. I mean, he might have been 32. It's just maybe it's the smoke and everything else that back then these guys, none of them looked young.
It was like when we did Deer Hunter and freaking Walken and De Niro were trying to pass us 20 years old.
Yeah, I'm in high school.
It's better than I guess what they did in Irishman. So.
Well, anything is better than that, but I think so. Well, anyways, we'll discuss that later. I will give you the final scores now, though. So, Steve-O and Chris, you have given it the highest score with a 10. I follow suit with a 9, and Joe gave it an 8. We mostly agreed for the plot. Joe took 1 point off for plot. Depending how we cut up antag, protag, secondary, I gave a 0 to secondary, Joe 0 to protag, and that's it. And you guys gave it a 0 to nothing. So it gives us a 9.25 overall, which is quite very strong. I think it's about right. Like, if you said 9, that'd be fine too, but I do think it's a strong film. Now, actually having seen this fucking movie, I think it is quite good. And I think it can stay on AFI. And number 28, sure. That's about right. I'd say leave it there, more or less.
This film was such a treat. It really, really was a treat.
I appreciate this film a lot more than some higher up movies on the AFI
Indeed.
that we've seen already. So I'll just say that. I think it definitely deserves its spot.
Yep.
Max
All right.
squared. Let's go.
Right on. So I think that'll do it for tonight's episode. Thank you for joining us. We are the Lost Signals, and I've been Scott Thurlow, joined tonight by Stephen Amosi.
It's all about Steve, not all about Eve, all right?
Fuck you. Boo.
I knew it.
Chris Morgan.
Thank you and good night.
As he laughs. And Joe Soria.
That's all, folks.
That's all she wrote. We'll see you next time. Have a good one. Peace.
All right.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.